The car's headlights pierced the darkness, illuminating the winding road ahead. Jack gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white from exhaustion and the long hours spent behind the wheel. The radio crackled with static, the only sound breaking the eerie silence of the night. As he rounded a bend, Jack suddenly slammed on the brakes, his heart leaping into his throat. There, in the middle of the road, stood a massive bear, its dark form looming ominously in the headlights. The creature was still, its eyes glinting with an otherworldly intelligence as it stared directly at Jack through the windshield. Jack sat frozen, his mind racing with fear and confusion. What was a bear doing out here, miles from any forest or wilderness? And why did it seem to be waiting for him, as if it had been expecting his arrival? Slowly, cautiously, Jack turned off the engine and stepped out of the car, his legs shaking beneath him. The bear remained motionless, its gaze never wavering from Jack's face. As he inched closer, Jack felt a strange sense of familiarity wash over him, as if he had encountered this creature before, in another life or perhaps a distant dream. The bear's eyes seemed to beckon him forward, inviting him to draw nearer. Jack hesitated, his instincts screaming at him to run, to get back in the car and drive away as fast as he could. But something deeper, more profound, urged him to stay, to confront this mysterious being and uncover the truth behind its appearance. And so, with a deep breath and a pounding heart, Jack took another step forward, ready to face whatever lay ahead, no matter how impossible or terrifying it might be. As Jack approached the bear, he noticed that its fur was not the typical brown or black he had seen in nature documentaries. Instead, the bear's coat shimmered with an iridescent hue, almost as if it were woven from strands of starlight. The creature's eyes, too, seemed to hold the depths of the universe within them, swirling with galaxies and nebulae. Jack's mind raced with questions. Was this a hallucination brought on by exhaustion? A trick of the light playing on his sleep-deprived eyes? Or was there something more at work here, something that defied rational explanation? He took another step forward, his hand outstretched, as if to touch the bear's shimmering fur. But before his fingers could make contact, the bear spoke, its voice a deep, resonant rumble that seemed to emanate from the very earth itself. "Jack," the bear said, its tone gentle yet commanding. "You have been chosen." Jack stumbled back, his eyes wide with shock. "Chosen? For what?" he managed to stammer, his voice barely above a whisper. The bear's gaze softened, and it lowered its massive head, bringing its eyes level with Jack's. "For a journey," it replied, "a journey that will reveal the truth about your past, your present, and your future." Jack shook his head, trying to clear the fog of confusion and disbelief. "I don't understand," he said, his voice trembling. "What truth? What journey?" The bear smiled, a gesture that seemed both comforting and unsettling. "All will be revealed in time," it said, its voice fading like a distant echo. "For now, trust in the path that has been laid before you, and know that you are not alone." With that, the bear turned and began to walk away, its form shimmering and blurring like a mirage in the desert heat. Jack watched, transfixed, as the creature disappeared into the darkness, leaving him alone on the desolate road, his mind reeling with questions and his heart filled with a strange, inexplicable sense of purpose. Jack stood there for what felt like an eternity, staring at the spot where the bear had vanished. His mind raced with questions, each more impossible than the last. Had he really just spoken with a bear? A bear that seemed to know his name and his destiny? He shook his head, trying to clear the fog of confusion and exhaustion. Maybe it had all been a dream, a hallucination brought on by too many hours on the road. But deep down, he knew that wasn't true. The encounter had been real, and it had changed everything. Slowly, Jack made his way back to the car, his legs feeling like lead. He slid behind the wheel, his hands trembling as he gripped the steering wheel. For a long moment, he sat there, staring out at the empty road ahead, trying to make sense of what had just happened. And then, as if guided by some unseen force, he turned the key in the ignition and began to drive, his destination suddenly clear in his mind. He didn't know where he was going or what he would find there, but he knew that he had to keep moving forward, to follow the path that the bear had laid out for him. As he drove, Jack's thoughts drifted back to his past, to the events that had led him to this moment. He had always felt like an outsider, like he didn't quite fit in with the world around him. He had drifted from job to job, relationship to relationship, never quite finding his place or his purpose. But now, for the first time in his life, he felt a sense of clarity, a sense of direction. The bear's words echoed in his mind, filling him with a strange sense of certainty and purpose. He didn't know what lay ahead, but he knew that he had to face it, to confront whatever truths the journey might reveal. And so, with a deep breath and a determined heart, Jack drove on into the night, ready to embrace whatever fate had in store for him. As the sun began to rise, casting a soft, golden light over the landscape, Jack found himself approaching a small, nondescript town. The buildings were old and weathered, their facades cracked and peeling, but there was a sense of warmth and familiarity about the place that drew him in. He parked the car on the outskirts of town and stepped out, stretching his legs and breathing in the crisp morning air. The streets were quiet, almost deserted, but Jack could feel the presence of something else, something that seemed to pulse and thrum beneath the surface of the town. As he walked down the main street, Jack caught sight of a small, weathered sign hanging above a doorway. "The Seeker's Inn," it read, the letters faded and worn. Something about the name resonated with him, and before he knew it, he was pushing open the door and stepping inside. The interior of the inn was dim and cozy, with a large fireplace crackling in the corner and a scattering of mismatched chairs and tables. Behind the counter stood an old man, his face lined with age and wisdom, his eyes twinkling with a knowing smile. "Welcome, Jack," the man said, his voice warm and inviting. "We've been expecting you." Jack froze, his heart skipping a beat. "How do you know my name?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The old man chuckled, a sound that seemed to fill the room with warmth and light. "The bear told us you were coming," he said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "She said that you were on a journey of discovery and transformation." Jack shook his head, trying to process the man's words. "I don't understand," he said, his voice trembling. "What journey? What transformation?" The old man smiled, his eyes filled with a deep, ancient wisdom. "All will be revealed in time," he said, echoing the bear's words from the night before. "For now, rest and gather your strength. The journey ahead will be long and difficult, but you are not alone. There are others who will guide you, who will help you find your way." With that, the old man handed Jack a key and pointed to a narrow staircase leading up to the second floor. Jack took the key, his mind reeling with questions and uncertainties, but he knew that he had no choice but to trust in the path that had been laid before him. And so, with a deep breath and a heavy heart, he climbed the stairs to his room, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Jack awoke the next morning feeling refreshed and rejuvenated, as if the weight of the world had been lifted from his shoulders. He dressed quickly and made his way downstairs, eager to explore the town and uncover whatever secrets it might hold. As he stepped out into the street, he was struck by the bustling activity around him. The once quiet town was now alive with people, each going about their daily business with a sense of purpose and determination. Jack watched as they greeted each other with warm smiles and friendly waves, their faces etched with lines of hardship and resilience. He made his way down the street, taking in the sights and sounds of the town. There were small shops and cafes lining the sidewalks, their windows filled with colorful displays and tantalizing aromas. Jack felt drawn to one in particular, a tiny bookshop nestled between two larger buildings. As he stepped inside, he was greeted by the musty smell of old books and the soft tinkling of a bell above the door. The shop was dimly lit, with towering shelves filled with volumes of every size and shape. Jack ran his fingers along the spines, marveling at the wealth of knowledge and stories contained within. "Can I help you find something?" a voice asked from behind him. Jack turned to see a young woman standing behind the counter, her auburn hair falling in soft waves around her face. She smiled at him, her green eyes sparkling with warmth and intelligence. I'm not sure, Jack admitted, feeling suddenly self-conscious. I'm just exploring, I guess. The woman nodded, her smile widening. Well, you've come to the right place, she said, gesturing to the shelves around them. There's no better way to explore than through books. Jack felt a sudden rush of gratitude towards the woman, towards the town itself. Here, in this tiny bookshop, he felt a sense of belonging, of connection to something greater than himself. I'm Jack, he said, extending his hand. The woman took it, her grip firm and warm. I'm Sarah, she replied, her eyes twinkling with mischief. And I have a feeling we're going to be great friends. As the days passed, Jack found himself falling into a comfortable routine in the small town. He would wake early, enjoy a hearty breakfast at the Seeker's Inn, and then spend his days exploring the shops and streets, getting to know the people who called this place home. He quickly discovered that the town was more than just a collection of buildings and businesses. It was a community, a family bound together by shared struggles and triumphs. Everyone seemed to know everyone else, and they welcomed Jack with open arms, as if he had always been a part of their lives. But even as he grew more comfortable in his new surroundings, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that something was calling to him, pulling him towards a destiny he couldn't yet fathom. He found himself spending more and more time with Sarah, the young woman from the bookshop, who seemed to understand his restlessness and uncertainty. You're searching for something, she said one day, as they sat together on a bench in the town square. Something bigger than yourself. Jack nodded, his gaze fixed on the horizon. I just don't know what it is, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Sarah reached out and took his hand, her touch warm and comforting. You'll find it, she said, her eyes shining with conviction. I know you will. But even as he drew strength from Sarah's words, Jack couldn't shake the sense of unease that had settled over him. He had thought that coming to this town would provide him with answers, with a clear path forward. But instead, he found himself more lost than ever, caught between the life he had known and the destiny that awaited him. And then, one night, as he lay tossing and turning in his bed at the Seeker's Inn, Jack had a dream. In it, he saw the bear again, its shimmering fur glowing in the darkness. But this time, the bear was not alone. Beside it stood a figure, a man with piercing blue eyes and a face etched with wisdom and sorrow. Find me, the man whispered, his voice echoing through the depths of Jack's mind. Find me, and you will find your truth. Jack awoke with a start, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew, with a certainty that defied explanation, that the man in his dream was real, and that he held the key to unlocking the mystery of Jack's past and future. With a heavy heart and a determined soul, Jack set out to find the man with the piercing blue eyes, ready to confront whatever truths lay ahead. Jack's search for the man with the piercing blue eyes led him to the outskirts of town, to a small, dilapidated cabin nestled in the woods. The cabin was old and weathered, its windows boarded up and its door hanging crookedly on its hinges. But Jack knew, with a certainty that defied explanation, that this was where he needed to be. He approached the cabin cautiously, his heart pounding in his chest. As he drew closer, he caught a glimpse of movement through one of the boarded-up windows. A shadow, a flicker of light, and then the door creaked open, revealing the man from his dream. He was older than Jack had expected, with a face lined with age and experience. But his eyes were just as piercing, just as intense as they had been in the dream. He regarded Jack silently for a long moment, his gaze seeming to penetrate the very depths of Jack's soul. You've come, the man said at last, his voice low and gravelly. I knew you would. Jack swallowed hard, trying to find his voice. Who are you? He managed to ask, his words sounding small and insignificant in the face of the man's presence. The man smiled, a sad, knowing smile that seemed to hold the weight of the world. I am a seeker, like you, he said, gesturing for Jack to come inside. I have been waiting for you, Jack, waiting for the one who will carry on my legacy. Jack followed the man into the cabin, his mind reeling with questions and doubts. The interior was dark and musty, with a single candle flickering on a rough-hewn table. The man sat down heavily in one of the chairs, motioning for Jack to do the same. "I have seen your future, Jack," the man said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I have seen the path that lies before you. It will not be an easy one, but it is a path that you must walk if you are to fulfill your destiny." Jack leaned forward, his heart pounding in his chest. "What destiny?" he asked, his voice trembling with a mixture of fear and anticipation. The man smiled again, his eyes glinting in the candlelight. "The destiny of a hero," he said, his words heavy with meaning. "The destiny of one who will change the world." In the days that followed, Jack spent countless hours with the old man in the cabin, learning the secrets of his past and the mysteries of his future. The man spoke of ancient prophecies and long-forgotten legends, of heroes and villains, and the eternal struggle between light and darkness. At first, Jack found it hard to believe, hard to accept that he could be a part of something so much bigger than himself. But as the old man spoke, Jack began to feel a stirring in his soul, a sense of purpose and destiny that he had never known before. He learned that he was not alone in his journey, that there were others like him, scattered throughout the world. They were the chosen ones, the seekers of truth and justice, the guardians of the ancient ways. And he learned of the bear, the shimmering creature that had first set him on this path. The bear was a spirit guide, a messenger from the other world, sent to lead the chosen ones to their destiny. As Jack listened and learned, he felt a sense of clarity and purpose settling over him. He knew that he had been chosen for a reason, that he had a role to play in the great drama that was unfolding around him. But even as he embraced his new identity, Jack couldn't shake the sense of unease that had settled over him. He knew that the path ahead would be fraught with danger and uncertainty, that he would be tested in ways he had never been tested before. And he knew that he would have to leave behind the life he had known, the people he had come to love. He thought of Sarah, of the warmth and comfort of her presence, and his heart ached with the knowledge of what he would have to do. But he also knew that he had no choice, that this was the path he was meant to walk. And so, with a heavy heart and a determined soul, Jack set out to face his destiny, ready to embrace whatever challenges lay ahead. As Jack made his way back to the town, his mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. He knew that he had to tell Sarah the truth, that he had to explain to her why he had to leave. But he also knew that it would break her heart, that it would shatter the fragile bond that had grown between them. He found her in the bookshop, her face etched with worry and concern. She took one look at him and knew that something was wrong, that something had changed. "Jack," she asked, her voice trembling with fear and uncertainty. "What's wrong? What's happened?" Jack took a deep breath, trying to find the words to explain. "I have to leave, Sarah," he said at last, his voice barely above a whisper. "I have to go on a journey that I can't turn back from." Sarah's eyes widened, her face paling with shock and disbelief. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice rising with panic. "Where are you going? Why do you have to leave?" Jack reached out and took her hand, his touch gentle and reassuring. "I have a destiny, Sarah," he said, his eyes shining with a fierce, unwavering conviction. "A destiny that I have to fulfill. I know it doesn't make sense, but I have to do this. I have to find out who I really am." Sarah shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. "But what about us?" she asked, her voice breaking with emotion. "What about everything we've shared? Everything we've been through together?" Jack felt his own tears welling up, his heart aching with the weight of his decision. "I will never forget you, Sarah," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "You will always be a part of me, no matter where I go or what I do. But I have to do this. I have to find my truth." Sarah nodded, her eyes shining with a deep, unwavering love. "I understand," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the pounding of their hearts. "I love you, Jack. I will always love you." Jack pulled her into his arms, holding her close as they wept together, their tears mingling with the dust and the shadows of the bookshop. And in that moment, he knew that no matter what the future held, no matter what challenges he would face, he would always carry a piece of Sarah with him, a reminder of the love and the hope that had brought him to this place. The next morning, Jack set out on his journey, his heart heavy with the weight of his goodbyes. He had said his farewells to the people of the town, to the friends and the strangers who had welcomed him into their lives. And he had said his final goodbye to Sarah, holding her close and promising her that he would return, that he would find his way back to her someday. As he walked through the streets of the town, his backpack slung over his shoulder, Jack felt a sense of purpose and determination settling over him. He knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult, that he would face challenges and obstacles that he could not yet imagine. But he also knew that he was not alone, that he had the strength and the courage of the seekers behind him, guiding him on his path. He made his way to the edge of town, to the spot where he had first encountered the bear. And there, waiting for him, was the old man from the cabin, his face etched with wisdom and understanding. "You are ready," the old man said, his voice low and steady. "You have the heart of a true seeker, Jack. You have the courage and the strength to face whatever lies ahead." Jack nodded, his eyes shining with a fierce, unwavering resolve. "I am ready," he said, his voice ringing with conviction. "I will find my truth, no matter what it takes." The old man smiled, his eyes twinkling with a knowing light. "Then go, Jack," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Go and fulfill your destiny, and know that we will be with you, always." With those words ringing in his ears, Jack set out on his journey, his heart pounding with anticipation and his soul singing with the promise of the unknown. He knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult, that he would face challenges and obstacles that he could not yet imagine. But he also knew that he was not alone, that he had the strength and the courage of the seekers behind him, guiding him on his path. And so, with a deep breath and a determined heart, Jack stepped forward into the unknown, ready to embrace whatever fate had in store for him. As Jack journeyed deeper into the wilderness, he began to feel a strange sense of familiarity, as if he had walked this path before in another life. The trees seemed to whisper secrets to him, the wind carrying messages from distant lands. He walked for days, his feet blistered and his body aching with exhaustion. But he pushed on, driven by a force that he could not explain, a deep, unshakable conviction that he was meant to be here, that he was meant to find something that had been lost long ago. And then, on the 7th day of his journey, he saw it. A shimmering light in the distance, a beacon of hope and promise that seemed to call out to him across the vast expanse of the wilderness. He quickened his pace, his heart pounding with anticipation. And as he drew closer, he saw that the light was emanating from a small, crystal-clear pool, its waters shimmering with an otherworldly glow. Jack approached the pool cautiously, his eyes wide with wonder and awe. And there, reflected in the still, mirror-like surface, was the bear. But it was not the bear that he had seen on the road, the bear that had set him on this path. This bear was different, its fur shimmering with a golden light, its eyes deep and wise and filled with ancient knowledge. "Welcome, Jack," the bear said, its voice low and melodic, like the sound of distant thunder. "You have come far, and you have faced many trials, but you have not yet reached the end of your journey." Jack knelt down beside the pool, his eyes locked on the bear's shimmering form. "What must I do?" he asked, his voice trembling with a mixture of fear and anticipation. The bear smiled, its eyes twinkling with a knowing light. "You must look within yourself, Jack," it said, its voice barely above a whisper. "You must confront the darkness that lies within your own heart, the fears and the doubts that have held you back for so long. Only then will you be able to find the truth that you seek." Jack nodded, his eyes shining with a fierce, unwavering resolve. "I am ready," he said, his voice ringing with conviction. "I will face whatever lies ahead, no matter what it takes." The bear nodded, its form shimmering and fading like a mirage in the desert heat. "Then go, Jack," it said, its voice echoing through the stillness of the wilderness. "Go and fulfill your destiny, and know that I will be with you, always." And with those words ringing in his ears, Jack plunged into the crystal-clear waters of the pool, ready to face the darkness within himself and emerge into the light of a new dawn. As Jack emerged from the pool, he felt a strange sense of clarity washing over him, as if the waters had cleansed him of all his doubts and fears. He looked around, taking in the beauty of the wilderness that surrounded him, the towering trees and the gently rolling hills that seemed to stretch out to the horizon. And then he saw it, a small, winding path that seemed to appear out of nowhere, leading off into the depths of the forest. Jack knew, with a certainty that defied explanation, that this was the path he was meant to follow, the path that would lead him to his final destination. He set out along the path, his heart pounding with anticipation. And as he walked, he began to feel a strange sense of connection to the world around him, as if he were a part of something much larger than himself, a part of the great web of life that stretched out across the universe. And then, as he rounded a bend in the path, he saw it. A small, ancient temple, its walls crumbling with age and neglect. But even in its state of disrepair, the temple seemed to radiate a sense of power and purpose, as if it had been waiting for him all along. Jack approached the temple cautiously, his eyes wide with wonder and awe. And there, waiting for him at the entrance, was the old man from the cabin, his face etched with wisdom and understanding. "Welcome, Jack," the old man said, his voice low and steady. "You have come far, and you have faced many trials, but you have not yet reached the end of your journey." Jack nodded, his eyes shining with a fierce, unwavering resolve. "I am ready," he said, his voice ringing with conviction. "I will face whatever lies ahead, no matter what it takes." The old man smiled, his eyes twinkling with a knowing light. "Then come, Jack," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Come and fulfill your destiny, and know that we will be with you, always." And with those words ringing in his ears, Jack stepped forward into the temple, ready to face the final challenge that lay ahead. As Jack entered the temple, he felt a strange sense of peace washing over him, as if he had finally found the place where he belonged. The walls were covered in ancient symbols and carvings, each one telling a story of heroes and villains, of great battles and epic quests. And there, at the center of the temple, was a small, simple altar, its surface worn smooth by the passage of time. Jack approached the altar cautiously, his heart pounding with anticipation. And there, lying on the altar, was a small, glowing crystal, its surface pulsing with an otherworldly light. Jack reached out and picked up the crystal, feeling its warmth and power flowing through his fingertips. And in that moment, he knew that this was what he had been searching for all along, the key to unlocking the secrets of his past and the mysteries of his future. He closed his eyes, letting the crystal's energy flow through him, filling him with a sense of strength and purpose that he had never known before. And as he opened his eyes, he saw that the temple had transformed, its walls shimmering with a golden light, its floor pulsing with the rhythm of the universe itself. And there, standing before him, was the bear, its form shimmering and shifting like a mirage in the desert heat. "Well done, Jack," the bear said, its voice low and melodic, like the sound of distant thunder. "You have found the crystal, and with it, the truth of who you really are." Jack looked down at the crystal in his hand, feeling its power thrumming through his veins. "What do I do now?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The bear smiled, its eyes twinkling with a knowing light. "You must return to the world, Jack," it said, its voice echoing through the stillness of the temple. "You must use the power of the crystal to bring hope and light to those who are lost in darkness. You must be a beacon of truth and justice, a guardian of the ancient ways." Jack nodded, his eyes shining with a fierce, unwavering resolve. "I will," he said, his voice ringing with conviction. "I will be the hero that the world needs. I will fulfill my destiny, no matter what it takes." And with those words, Jack turned and walked out of the temple, the crystal glowing brightly in his hand, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As Jack emerged from the temple, he felt a sense of purpose and clarity that he had never known before. He looked out over the wilderness, seeing it with new eyes, as if he were seeing it for the first time. He knew that the journey ahead would not be easy, that he would face many challenges and obstacles along the way. But he also knew that he was not alone, that he had the strength and the courage of the seekers behind him, guiding him on his path. He thought of Sarah, of the love and the hope that she had given him, and he knew that he would carry her with him always, no matter where his journey might take him. He thought of the people of the town, of the kindness and the generosity that they had shown him, and he knew that he would never forget them, that he would always hold them in his heart. And he thought of the bear, of the wisdom and the guidance that it had given him, and he knew that he would always be grateful for the role that it had played in his life, for the way that it had helped him to find his true self. As he walked out into the wilderness, the crystal glowing brightly in his hand, Jack felt a sense of hope and promise that he had never known before. He knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult, that he would face many challenges and obstacles along the way, but he also knew that he was ready, that he had the strength and the courage to face whatever lay ahead. And so, with a deep breath and a determined heart, Jack set out on his journey, ready to embrace his destiny and become the hero that the world needed him to be. The end.